Hello, my friend. Today is still continue to building of the cockpit, and as I tell you, I used to record it. How do I paint the cockpit before? And if you want to check, you can check it in my YouTube channels. And when I was building Aubrey 10 Bronco, I showed you how do I paint the cockpit. And maybe it might helpful if you see that. Simply, it's not complicated work, so it's very simple things. Just I mean, it doesn't have so much techniques on it because it's just concentrate on it, and just be patient. It's very tiny works, but it's quite very easy. And before, as you can see, I painted as a black first, and then I need to put some white or red or yellow for switches. I have to paint it, but sometimes when you see the black surface, you cannot see the exact what it is. Sometimes it's very hard to identify, and it makes you some difficulties of the painting. So so tiny words. So I can show you very easy to find way. First, I think this is a sort of dry brush, but it's not. It's just a marking to paint. It's not actual paint. So. It's just a little bit is alright. So you can easily identify the mold of the switches, and if you put so much, you can just erase, because this paint is very easy to wipe off. So it shouldn't be keeping so long time. So it's just identify which is switches, which is the some other meters or lights or whatever. You can easily identify it, right? And then you can paint as a white or red or blue or whatever. I do the whole black area before I paint to clear to identify that, because sometimes I cannot see. And in this time I'm using by our original kit, trumpeter kit. I don't use the resin kit, so it doesn't have to be so care about that. However, when you are using by resin very accurate cockpit, maybe you need to better to do this, because the mold is so accurate and very small and very hard to identify. So once you're doing these kind of things, it's very helpful for you to paint the switches. And some other things. It's very similar to doing as our dry brush techniques, but it's not actual like that. It's just pre-painting. Just doing as dry brush way. So you can identify, oh, this is whatever This is this is a very little point to do that, to paint a cockpit very accurate. Sometimes you might miss the paint, very small dot. I mean, you miss that. It's just because why you cannot identify black surface, which is which is switches, which is not switches or something like that. And after painting switches or some other things, this kind of pigment will be disappear. If you want to wipe it off with the water or some other things, this kind of pigment is very easy to wipe off. So it's just the marking is alright. At least I think the stress of the painting the very tiny part will be decreased by doing these things, and maybe it will decrease the mistake time. And as I tell you, if you are putting so much, you can wipe it off with enamel is alright. Put so much, you just wipe it off, which is very easy. At least I can find it, because in this case I told you this is very it's not so many things to paint it, because this is original trumpeter kit cockpit, so maybe I can do that without doing this. But if you're doing with the resin kit or some other kit, you need to make sure that the edge of the mold, and it helps you to figure out how to paint so accurate. This is very good for before you paint it. Anyway.
Sorry for my quite poor English to explain this. If you don't understand very well, I'm very feel sorry about that. And then next is paint it out with the acrylic paint, which is like firehole is alright. It's just this is very important to put the white color first before you paint yellow or red. If you paint directly on a black surface, red or yellow, the color will not show you very bright. So the first I just put all switches and whatever, I put a white dot first, and if you cannot see so much, you just using by some kind of the base like that. And just be patient. Nothing special at all. Just try to put the switches on. And the other hand, the important things that you should mention about is the brush. the condition of the brush is very important. If you are using a very old, rough, and very messy brush, it might be very hard to paint in accurate. So when you're doing this, you need to use the very fresh and very sharp. And some of my friends using by very high quality, expensive one, and you can use it so if you have. Put some thinner on it, and always keep the brush good for paint. And of course, once you missed, overpaint it, you can cover with touch up. You can easily touch up using by the other black acrylic paint. When you're seeing with the daylight, which is very easy to identify the small mold. However, if you are doing with the dark night, just only room light, sometimes you cannot identify it. So that's why I use the weathering master before I paint it to make sure that the mold. This one is pretty, I think, easy task. I think if I compare with the resin is damn hard. So many things to paint. And this time I used very easy way. So as I tell you, you can paint some part. It has a yellow or red switches, and you can paint it after you paint a white color. If you do that, the yellow or red color is bright more, and you can identify. You can clearly show, oh, this is very accurate red switches, or very accurate yellow lights, or whatever. And always keep the brush condition very nice. And the other side. Very small switches I have to paint it. Let's see this. But if the brush condition is nice, and if you can see clearly, it's not difficult at all. It's just need a practice, and it's I think the difficulty of to doing this kind of things is always are comes from the height of the mold. If the mold is very low, I think how do I say? Sometimes it's very hard to identify the depths of the mold. It's very hard to put the color on it because the height of the switches is very low. So sometimes you miss the paint, right? But in this case, I think the mold is very nice. So I just can easily put the dot. When I was making our F-14 Hornet, and this was I think Academy, the cockpit was very it is very accurate, but the switches are very small and mold is very hard to identify, and it doesn't have enough height, so the switches, it was very hard to paint the switches. But in this time I can do this easier than before, I think. It doesn't need to have some special skills, but you need to have some rest. Very it should be need to be very concentration. So sometimes you need a rest, coffee time, whatever. It's very bad for eyes anyway. It's very tiny. After paint all switches as the white, I do some switches as silver or yellow or red according to the real pictures. But I think in this time I used the original trumpeter kit cockpit, so some part is is quite totally different from original real cockpit. So sometimes it's all about. It's not accurate, but it's just fine. Okay, it might have some yellow switches here or something like that. It's just a guess. So now is the front seat has almost done. And next is, I think, the rear cockpit. Switches. And in the other hand, if I compare with the other aircraft cockpit, I think the Tomcat cockpit is quite easy design. I mean, in my experience, the Tomcat cockpit is very one of the very well designed. I mean, you don't feel so difficult to paint it out, because I can tell you about the console panel is very straight, and I think the front console panel is also the same. Very easy to paint it out if I compare with the others. So it's more like F-15, F-16. I'm not sure which is easy for you, but in my case, I think the F-14 is quite easy side, I think. But I think the difficulties is always tended to the person. Some people might think this is very difficult. But in my case, this one is pretty easy. And of course, it have at least 1 day or 2 days to complete the whole things. And the very important things that I can tell you is you should take time. Don't hurry to complete this, because if you hurry, the mistakes will happen so many times in these kind of things. Is you just need concentration. So in that case, you should need that time. You should have a time. And it was very easy, but don't like it. I don't like it. Easy, but it's just be patient works, right? So and by the way, I used the this color. This is I think the off-white, which is the flat color, very fast to dry, and which is nice. But according to the flat paint, you have to recondition your brush so many times, because if the brush get dry, it's very hard to paint it. So always keep the brush a little bit wet. Always keep the brush very nice condition to paint. So I always using acrylic thinner and wipe off a little bit. Some paint are already get dry, so sometimes but anyway, anyhow, in a modern aircraft builder, every person, I think, they have to do the same thing as me. So this is not very interesting tips, but at least you can understand my style of painting. Anyway. Prepare the new paint and washing the brush again. It's depends on the season. When it is the winter, the drying time will be much longer, but in Japan now is the summertime, so very fast to get dry. And if you don't want to, you can use the delay thinner. Delay to dry, of course. I think when you are painting with the figure face, some people use the thinner for delay to get dry completely. But I don't have it, so it's just fun. Well. The rear cockpit, the other side has already done. So I will do the whole things with the other part, which is like the side panel. It has some fuses, whatever. So after I complete, I can show you the result of my painting. So thank you for watching.